Hey, this is the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and believe it or not, whether you like it or don't like it, learn to love it, because you have to listen to Wrestling is Real. It is the best thing going today. Woo!
The worldwide leader of podcasting excellence, the king of podcasts radio network proudly presents The Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us.
And welcome. It is the week that Who Killed WCW, the documentary from Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, premiered last night as I recorded the program. And what a good time to go ahead and reflect back on WCW and the mistakes and the impact that that promotion made onto WWE and where we are today with it right now, with AEW always getting a lot of similarities, a lot of distinctions, a lot of poking at AEW because people feel like it is AEW, it's the WCW today. And in many ways, it feels like that. I get it. It's not perfect, but I must say this, that WWE is just as culpable of making the same mistakes that WCW made as well. It's just the way it is. Look, you have to remember some of the folks that we have right now in charge with Triple H and Shawn Michaels and Bruce Pritchard and whoever else is back there now working things behind the scenes. The same thing goes with, who you have over on the side of AEW with Jim Ross working over there, Dustin Rhodes and all these kind of, these other folks that are over there, and Arn Anderson, who knows who's over there as well, working on creative. There's a lot of people that were part of that whole era of the Monday Night Wars. This is the third time I've basically seen a retelling of this story. There's the Brian Alvarez story of the death of WCW. There's the Guy Evans version of Nitro, right? And then there's this. And I remember the WCW, rise and fall that WWE put out there. And I was curious to see what was going to be done to where The Rock wants to go ahead and put this out there in a different story. And he got a lot of good people from this time around that we would have liked to have heard from the previous time. From Diamond Dallas Page, Medusa, Conan, Kevin Nash, Eric Bischoff, Vince Russo. Yeah, all those players. Absolutely. I like we have all that right there, put in one place. Now, for those that don't already know, for the longest time, I have said on this program since day one. Initially, during the Monday Night Wars, I was more of a WCW fan than WWE. But my real fandom, if I had to really have a loyalty towards a promotion, it was ECW at the time. ECW to me was, that was the breakout promotion. And they really, ECW and what Paul Heyman was doing, I honestly believe that what they did really did make some changes, because it wasn't in the early part. Like the first part of Who Killed WCW doesn't have anything to do with ECW, because ECW wasn't a factor at that point. It wasn't until WWE decided to go and let ECW go ahead and play along that really made the difference. And then we started seeing the change to the Attitude Era because of whether that crowd responded. And people catching the shows and finding out, there's a different side to this here. Because with WWE, they had to figure out what were they going to do to go ahead and counter-program WCW, because WCW was doing something that was a little more organic, a little more creative. Of course, they were copying things. I mean, remember, they took the storyline of the NWO from All Japan Pro Wrestling, or New Japan, I forget. It was always one of those two. And I was taken over here. But it worked. And you had the right people to go and do it. But we also know that the NWO ran its course. Too many people in it. If you had to again let me say who, when the NWO was at most formidable, is, I'm going to say probably at 6. Because I want to say it was Hogan, Hall, Nash, 6. I'll say the Giant. That was the 5. 5 of them. I don't think there was 6 of them right there, but that's who I think it was. That was the 5 that really represented what I thought was the epitome of NWO. Like, if you give me the 4 Horsemen, I'm always going to say it's Ric Flair, Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson, Barry Windham. Like that's the group I remember. That was the one I enjoyed of the 4 Horsemen. Don't get me wrong with the Oldie. Don't get me wrong with Sid Vicious. I get it, but that's who I preferred in that realm. WCW just had more to me because you did have the factions there. There was a change in WWE already, or WWF, because they didn't have factions as much as they were anymore. The managers were gone. Remember? The gimmicks were gone. We didn't have Mr. Fuji. We didn't have Dr. Styles Slick. We didn't have Bobby Heenan. Like, all that went away. And that kind of helped with all the gimmicks that they had. They were all wrapped around each other. Hulk Hogan went away. You know, I mean, and to rely on the fact that it was Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, hey, great talent. Don't get me wrong. But mid-90s WWF, that was not easy to watch. It wasn't as fun anymore. But then again, I'd already moved to college. Like, it was right around the time that, like, yeah, everything kind of changed. And then I started following along when Hulk Hogan went to WCW. It didn't take much time for them to go to Bash at the Beach, give us Flair and Hogan. Hogan wins, and all of that. There was the good that we saw. And by the way, it was really interesting. WCW, they basically told the good of the story, the rise, in one episode. So the bad part is the next 3 episodes. That's interesting. They decided to go and just go that route. Now, the WWE documentary on the rise and fall probably went a little bit farther. You know, and that one, we got more of the success of the 83 weeks, which we all remember. And amazing how it looked like it was at that time. But now, the things that were coming out of that WCW was doing that worked out. Because there were a couple of things that Eric Bischoff, I give him credit for, aside from NWO. I mean, he did have a lot of good talent on that roster. The cruiserweights were very important. The Lucha Libre When Worlds Collide pay-per-view and coming in. And then all these folks coming into the board, right? Like all the great luchadors we had. Rey Mysterio, Psychosis, Juventud Guerrera. I think of Silver King. I think of, you know, those guys were just, you know, it was just rock star. And also, like, you know, you had good wrestlers that started making their way from ECW up to WCW with, you know, Benoit and Malenko and Jericho. I mean, there was such great talent that they brought, you know, really Guerrero, Malenko, Jericho, and Benoit, like just right there. Give me those guys whenever you wanted, and I could just watch those guys. You go after it. Plus the fact that those folks could always take on the luchadors. I mean, Malenko was great with the luchadors. That guy could work with anybody. It's fantastic. And it was one of those things where that's the WCW aspect that makes me think of AEW. Because it's those stars at the first hour of the show on Nitro that always got my attention. Like, I really enjoyed that. And then you have that second tier that's, you know, a little bit what WWE has and what the AEW has as well. There's some of those stars are like big heavyweights are like for WWE, I think some of the heavyweights I see right now that I just don't really feel much for, or just the people that they have, really don't make much of a difference for me. Like, I mean, when I think of, I kind of think of like Bronson Reed, I kind of think of Big Scott Gordon. I don't know why, but Scott Gordon was good. We saw him a lot. It was just kind of like just out there so much. And I try to think about like, well, we saw Lex Luger. They used to run Lex Luger down our throats. Barry Windham was out there. I mean, Kurt Hennig worked a lot. And don't get me wrong, I like Kurt Hennig. That guy was great. But man, did they put him out there a lot. And, you know, it's like the same stars going out there without much of a storyline to go with, without much of anything going on, and letting storylines go stagnant. And then when Bischoff was away from creative control, and you give it to Kevin Nash, like a Kevin Nash booking WCW in a way is what like Triple H is right now booking WWE right now. There's some favoritism of who he wants to go and book on the shows, all of that. And those things I'm like, you know, I'm not really like all happy about it either. Because there's favoritism of who should be up at the very top and who should be working with. And, you know, then younger stars are going to get put by the wayside. It's a very WCW thing to do. A lot of the younger stars never got their way to go and move up. They got a place to get presented. You know, they definitely had a spotlight, but they were never going to be the world heavyweight champion. As long as Hogan and Flair and Piper and Bret Hart and all these other folks were up there, a lot of former WWF guys, right? Which, again, getting all the free agents. and taking them all over. Same thing goes here. See, the WCW side has affected both WWE and AEW in terms of the free agents. So at first it was WCW taking all the WWF guys, right? All that rock and wrestling era, basically. And then we were left as, so many stars of the younger crop that were on WWF and working their way through. And then after that, WCW, when they started, making some issues, that's the thought process right now, that people feel like AEW, they're trying to create stories that there's all these people that are upset and they need to move on over. If you might remember, I have a Supporters Club episode where I talked about the Sportster that put a story out that says that, there are 10 stars in AEW that would work really well in WWE, right? They should go and go over. Just things like that. Okay. And the WWE fandom out there, right? The fans right now, these real fanatics and again, my fellow podcast wrestling brethren and the media out there that reports on wrestling on a regular basis, all of you are going to go ahead and Monday morning quarterback. You're going to go ahead and say, well, these other stars should be somewhere else. You see it all the time. Let me tell you something. Andrade's been back for how long? What have we done with him yet? I mean, he's there. Such a big acquisition. And nothing. Andrade, I feel like he's done nothing while he's been there or here. In AEW or WWE, nothing. And it's not on him. Put him in Mexico, he's rocking. Put him in AAA, he's rocking. For whatever reason, I don't know if it's just something about some of the stars they have and they don't know what to do with. With Andrade, it's like, well, it's going to be tough because they got Roosh down there, And I'm just trying to figure out what's the whole idea here. Because, look, WCW was good about having a developmental system. They had, the power plant. And they definitely brought stars up from that power plant to become more prominent. Goldberg is the most glaring example of somebody that came from the power plant. They built him up from his career in pro football. He comes in and, Kevin Sullivan's the guy behind helping the booking of Goldberg, and automatically overnight just blew people away. And that was a second win for WCW. A second chance to continue to go forward for WCW was Goldberg. And, when you hit like that a couple different times, you're doing pretty good. Of course, there's got to be a middle ground with both of these companies. I think Tony Khan's done the best of trying to be able to do that. He's got a lot of veterans right now that are in prominent places on the roster. The Black Bull Combat Club, you got a lot of veterans right there. You have the Young Bucks also positioned. And think about the fact that you always have this thing where it's, again, an old-fashioned kind of feel in wrestling where you have older stars working with younger stars. You get the mentorship. Sting attached to Darby Allin. Nick Wayne, the prospect, going to attach to Christian Cage. Jack Perry now being attached to the Elite. You look at their learning tree right now with Brian Keith and Big Bill. Things like that. It's just, you're just changing it up. You're working things through. And, you think about what they've done in terms of who they've brought on in terms of feuds. Like MJF has worked with everybody. Worked with all the veterans. And rightfully so. And he's the top star of the company. And he comes out, commands the ring. And let's see how good of a rating they go and pop the first thing out coming out of Dynamite tonight. See if that does any better. So that works for them. And with some of the other stars in WWE, you have a lot of veterans that are there that have been used around, but, they're not necessarily going to put them back up at the very top again. You think about Drew McIntyre or CM Punk or Randy Orton, or Bobby Lashley. They're not necessarily up at that very top. Meanwhile, Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins when he was still healthy, you think about that, and obviously with Roman Reigns, that's where you really feel there's the high level of what's going on. And Damian Priest is at that older level at 40 years old. So the veteranship they have in a particular level, but, it's not so much the veterans that are going to be put towards the top and towards the main event. It's going to be the people that are favoritism. The people that, for whatever reason, that Triple H or the people that he has curried favor for are getting positions prominently. Gargano and Ciampa taking a slot from other tag teams that could be in this roster, okay? Lyra Valkyria. I mean, there's some favoritism among her right there. Kiana James, same thing. Carmelo Hayes, same thing. Zoe Stark, Shayna Baszler, same thing. And, you know, I try to think about what they're doing on the wayside of what they can be doing more. Like Miz, now put him in a tag team, just don't even like do much with him. Meanwhile, other stars they have right now that they could be building up to do something more. Tiffany Stratton is out there, but, you know, we haven't seen much of her lately. You got Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill, you put them off to the side and tag team, you know, segments for whatever, because that's what you're going to do with them. Deal with the likes of, you know, it's like, come on. And then I'm trying to think, like, you could be doing more with Austin Theory and Grayson Waller if they were split up. Braun Breaker, they're trying to give something to him now. It's like they're trying to give the feeling of what, it's not Scott Steiner, it's not Rick Steiner. It's like they're kind of picking away at little things that they can try to make to identify him. But he's still one-dimensional. Oh, his thing with Adam Pearce. Oh, okay. But it's like, you know, the crowd's not booing him, right? Like, for him to go and attack Ricochet and Ilya Dragunov, both babyfaces as far as I know, and Braun Breaker, I thought you were trying to turn him heel. It didn't work. It failed. You're going to get him the job, you know, he's going to take a job or he's going to, you know, tear him apart, and that's supposed to get some heat. But that heat goes away. There's nothing to go and build the heat upon. That's one of those things where, you know, you have stars all the time that they would try to go and build up and whatever, in WWE or AEW, you might have stars that are going to try to build up and try to make something more out of. You know, like Wardlow's been kind of like in that spot where, you know, you put him in squash matches and this and that. And, you know, he's kind of lost now in Undisputed Kingdom. Like, I think there was something where we're going to have them split apart, but we really haven't seen that yet. And one of the things too is that, you know, sometimes when I see certain stars that are going to be accompanying to the ring with a group, that the whole faction's not coming out. Like for Undisputed Kingdom, Roderick Strong goes out all the time. Adam Cole's not out there. You know? And Wardlow's not out there. So, you know, it's like that part of like, okay, well, the whole faction's not coming out. And same thing for the Black Hole Combat Club. We're not going to see them all come out either. When they've had some time to kind of build things up. But that's the part where, like, you're not giving a proper storyline to them. Like tonight on Dynamite, Chris Jericho Learning Tree, you're getting segments all across the time. Swerve Strickland is getting a lot of time as well. He is, you know, they're positioning him pretty well. I was kind of worried because of him being a world champion. Were they going to position him like they would with MJF or like they did with Jericho or once him, you know, it's like, it was just something where I just wonder if they really set something up to put enough time towards things. But I mean, so far I'm happy with it. My thing is they could do some more with Collision. They're going to be doing a lot more in terms of building up storylines because they're kind of off and on. They'll get a little bit more, tell a story. House of Black, tell a story. You know, Lucha Brothers, tell a story. Elite, tell a story. You know, it was like kind of that. Like when Tony Khan first started, you know, like some of the factions he had on board, Inner Circle, man, I got a lot of time. But nobody gets the level of that like Inner Circle. Not right now anyway. Undisputed Kingdom, you think would be there at the very top, but it's not. Don Callis family, you think it absolutely would be there at the very top, but they're not either. It's as if they don't want to have anybody necessarily to be at that very top all the time and have that main event level. But they're also trying to make it where the programming is not stagnant. I get why Tony Khan's doing this. He wants to make it a little bit different, so you're not seeing the same show every week. He's trying to counter-program WWE, right? Because WWE will rarely put out the same cast of characters on every show. And that's one of the things that I really consider myself. But there are a lot of things that make this era of wrestling different. Okay? The Bloodline right now is at the, like I said, not too long ago, when the Bloodline was at a pure peak, I said this was a better storyline than NWO, better faction than NWO. And that was a lot for me to say. But even NWO, they lost steam. And after the whole deal with Starrcade 97 that they mentioned on Who Killed WCW and Sting winning the title, yeah, convoluted finish, you know, they pulled the trigger on that storyline way too late. because it was off and on with Sting. He wasn't always out there, battling the NWO. It kind of was off to the side. And also it was Sting by himself. Then he finally gets a match with Hogan. And, it's one of those where I think they waited too long on it. Like, to get to 18 months to get there, it's a little bit much. It's one thing for them to go and book it at Starrcade. It's another when we're waiting to see what's going to happen. Because no matter what, Hogan's still holding the belt. And finding his way to keep the belt on him the whole time. And that was the part everybody was upset about. Like, that was the part where, Hogan's doing everything. Bischoff's not doing anything about it. They're just letting Hogan run the show. And other folks at NWO also having a lot of pull. And, if they got into Hogan's ear, then Hogan could just say whatever he wants about whatever he wants. And that was it. Obvious favoritism. But in that point, it was Eric Bischoff just kind of letting Hogan run roughshod, which is always the wrong thing to do. You can't just always go with that. If Hogan wants to control his own character, that's one thing. But to have the rest of that roster. And then the same mistake made in TNA. That's Dixie Carter's fault. Why Dixie Carter decided to go ahead and let Bischoff and Hogan come back in like they did, I mean, I get it. It did kind of give him a little more of a boost, but all they did was just, damper the growth of TNA that was already being done several years prior since their inception. Because they were all young. Like, first part we always think about is that with AEW, they kind of feel like what an early TNA was. And that's that's more indicative of what they were, or what they are. They're more of a TNA of 2002 to 2008, basically. That's what I feel like it is now. But there are some different wrinkles this side. We don't have Vince McMahon in this picture anymore, who was integral. He was the bane of existence that Eric Bischoff had to push so hard to make WCW number one, and not just number one, but to try to destroy Vince McMahon's business. Put him out of business. So we don't have that person anymore. The family's not even involved. It's Triple H and now TKO Group Holdings. And on the other side, Tony Khan, he's not trying to go ahead and do that, what Eric Bischoff did. It's not for him to go and do that. I mean, listen, he's getting some free agents, and I don't think he has necessarily picked any stars that are wrong to pick. Like, I think some of the stars he's chosen to go and bring on board have been good. But the other difference now is that you had two open pocketbooks. You had two open checkbooks on both sides. Vince, wide open checkbook. Ted Turner, wide open checkbook. Like, the budgets were big for those companies. We're already seeing that TKO Group Holdings is not the same. They've made more cuts. We're starting to see now that with Becky Lynch, she's not going to get re-signed with WWE. Is she AEW? If Tony Khan wants to sign her, he can. He could probably put enough money to make it possible. But when he gets these stars, what is he going to be able to do with them? Is he going to be able to make them really stand out? Like, even Mercedes Renee was not out there tonight, but that's because they had other things focused on. Coming out of Double or Nothing, they focused on Willow Nightingale coming her way back and Chris Statlander and all that stuff, right? It's like they had other things they're going to worry about in the 2 hours. It's unfortunate that Collision doesn't actually go and take care of the other bulk of storylines from, say, like a Double or Nothing that we can't really get back out, really like kind of fill that in. Like, you have that immediate like fallout from a pay-per-view like that and go to this. But the thing is, with Dynamite, they had to go and get ready for Forbidden Door. So they're going the route of like the New Japan stars are in here, the CMLL stars are in here. They're trying to set things up for the pay-per-view. It's the right thing to do. The pay-per-view is always going to be important. And Tony Khan does book for the pay-per-views. Triple H does book for the pay-per-views. But it's the other part of TV that both companies kind of lack at. They're not good at it. Yeah, they want to set up for the pay-per-view matches. They're doing that. There's no question about that. So anything that has to do with a belt, I think both companies probably do, they do a serviceable job of booking towards the pay-per-views. So that at least the pay-per-view matches are very interesting. I wouldn't say all of them. I mean, look, I think the Owen Hart Cup is pretty important. The way they set that up, we'll like that because obviously like they do a good job of that. Now, Bryan Danielson setting himself up to go ahead and be a part of that. Tony Khan already making the announcement that a world title shot comes out of that. and Bryan Danielson really wants to get there, so that Owen Hart Cup tournament final, or the setup to get the match at All In Wembley Stadium, is a big deal. They set up just very well for that. But they're still like, they set up for pay-per-views, and, you know, we have to, they're missing out on what the rest of the TV product is. And maybe it doesn't matter because of the fact that they're just kind of moving along with, you know, they're not worried about that too much. They're just, they don't expect that many people are going to be watching, you know, 2 or 3 hour programs when they can just probably catch what they're going to catch on social media. And I think both shows suffer from that, but of course we're such diehard fans, we're always kind of be caught up on that. I mean, there are certain things that obviously I think that, you know, we look forward to seeing on TV on a regular basis, and I do think we get some of that. Tony Storm coming out every week, yeah, I'm enjoying that gimmick immensely. And seeing her on pay-per-view, listen, it's working for me. It's working. Swerve Strickland, absolutely working for me. Will Ospreay, I enjoy his work. I really do. And they're setting all up with that. For the WWE side, well, you know, I think for me, you know, I feel like Judgment Day, you know, I like Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley, but all the stuff right now with Liv and Dom, we got to talk about that too. Oh, yeah, okay. We got to talk about that. The Liv Morgan Dominic Mysterio storyline. All right. I don't like it necessarily. I get it. You know, there's this whole thought process that Liv Morgan wants to go and take Dominic away from Rhea. The whole revenge tour continues here. Okay. You're connecting the dots. Got it. But, you know, the character that Liv Morgan is, you know, I don't see her really feeling like, to me, Dominic Mysterio's character would even go and fall for that. Like, we've never seen him, like, get weak in the knees around other women. Like, unless it's Rhea. And, like, Rhea's done nothing to upset Dominic. I mean, remember, we don't have Rhea Ripley out there anyway. Like, if there was a rift and then Rhea Ripley gets jealous and then there's a friction between them and then Liv's trying to go ahead and stir things up. Okay, I get that part, but they're doing it right now and Liv Morgan doesn't have that opponent. I mean, she just got the belt back from Becky Lynch. Now she's trying to go and stir up things with Rhea, who's not out there. Drew McIntyre, stirring things up at Clash of the Castle, setting up for the event at Glasgow, Scotland. And CM Punk's not there. Like, there's a part where, like, where's your antagonist? Where's your protagonist? You got to have both of them out there. Or at least be heard, but we're not. And that doesn't make sense to me either. So they're working this all out. And some of the matches are already set up now for next weekend in Glasgow, right? They're doing matches for the sake of, like, let's get some of the European stars prominent places. That's what I feel like they're doing right now. And that doesn't make sense to me either. Piper Niven's going to get a title shot for the women's title against Bayley. No, I don't get that. I mean, the setup for that match anyway is, you know, with Piper Niven blasting Bayley from behind, and that whole setup, I'm like, I hate it. I mean, Bayley has looked so weak so far. Sami Zayn looking extremely weak against Chad Gable. And still Alpha Academy is not ready to go ahead and break it up. Now, people think that, Otis is going to be like the next Sami Zayn with a bloodline. It's not the same. People just want to make it feel like it is, but it's not. It doesn't feel organic. I mean, the emotional part that makes me want to be emotionally invested, I don't feel that right now. It's just not there yet. What makes you think it is? But everybody's all caught up in thinking, this is wonderful. This is great. It's like, there's nothing wrong with it. Yeah, there is. It's not it. Damian Priest, Drew McIntyre, they set up the match. You know, it's more about the fact that Drew McIntyre is here to go and take this match against Damian Priest, but Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre trying to set them up to get some heat between each other don't work either. Are they going to be good matches? Yes. Do we need another Do we need another match with Chad Gable and Sami Zayn? No. Sami Zayn going out there for no reason really, but wants to go out there anyway and get himself all caught up and get beaten up. Very dumb babyface. AJ Styles doing the same thing with Cody Rhodes. Dumb babyface. So for whatever reason, the bloodline must have been so good that we were overshadowed by everything else that was not doing right. But that's where we are right now in WWE. Listen, you're not going to like this, but right now the bloodline is struggling to try to sustain the bloodline right now with Solo Sikoa being the leader, supposedly, and Tama Tonga Tangaloa taking losses and being put out there, so they lose in the ring quite a bit, but then they get their comeuppance on what, Randy Orton and Kevin Owens? It's not even NWO Wolfpack. Like, there's just something there where, like, the bloodline is not dominant at all. They haven't really accomplished anything. Like, they really have not done anything at all. Like, what kind of bloodline is that? I mean, the bloodline, I remember, you got the Usos, tag team champions, and Roman Reigns is the Universal Champion. So there's no dominance. There's nothing here. There's just a bunch of thugs out there right now for the bloodline. And that's all there is. Nothing else. It feels boring to me. But the bloodline's out there for the sake of the bloodline. I mean, the standout part of the promo with Paul Heyman and Kevin Owens is that Paul Heyman and Kevin Owens, cut good promos on each other. But the bloodline of the bloodline doesn't matter. The only significant person right now in the bloodline that's very interesting is Paul Heyman. Because he knows how to get himself over all the time. Kevin Owens can get himself over all the time. And I'm not feeling the same kind of vibe with the rest of the bloodline. Some ones are not cutting it. Like right now, I don't feel like there's any reason for Jacob Fatu to come into the fold right now and attack because they've done nothing. What have they done? Picked off a couple of guys. That's it. Braun Breaker's had more of an impact than the bloodline has right now in this current incarnation. I mean, I get it. Listen, they're supposed to be like doing things that are going to be mutinous when it comes to Roman Reigns, whenever he comes back. But we have to wait for that. We have to wait for The Rock. That's next year. That is 6 months from now. The 6 months in this space right here. Okay. What we talked about when it comes to WrestleMania. Coming out of WrestleMania. Yeah. Drew McIntyre, CM Punk. We haven't gotten there yet. Becky Lynch on the outs. Bianca Belair. Okay. She's off with Jade Cargill. Like that storyline right there. The tag team to where they're going to have to go ahead and like break them up. I'll have to assume that Jade Cargill is going to break off. Right. And be heel? Unless they don't want to do that? Like, they're not doing any favors right now. Nothing. It's a bit upsetting. And like I said, look, there's nobody coming to the rescue of this company after this. WWE is not going to be able to go ahead and go after free agents like you think they're going to be. And you think some of these AEW stars are going to come on over and they're going to make a difference? No. It's a story that came in from Andrew Kelly at the Sportster. And he has claimed right now that Gunther is Triple H's biggest success story in WWE right now. By the way, that was a little commercial that Sportster pumps in, of course. So yeah, Gunther, longest reigning Intercontinental Champion ever, King of the Ring. So Gunther right now has been booked very strong. And I agree, Gunther is probably the most successful character they've had so far. I mean, I'll tell you this, I think it would be kind of hard to see that Gunther could have been screwed over. Like they could have screwed up Gunther. That would have been very tough. Very tough to do that. But no, they're good. The IC title, the King of the Ring titles, revitalizing Triple H's creative control to elevate new talent like Gunther. Yeah. I mean, but we're still going to see about right now with Gunther when he gets a chance to go after a title, right? Because the King of the Ring, he's supposed to get a title shot. We have to go and see that still come to fruition. Whenever that's supposed to be, he has to be able to cash that in. And the other part we're having right now is that WWE is going to have their Money in the Bank. And what are they going to be doing with that? The stars that you could probably consider after Clash of the Castle that are going to be vying for that Money in the Bank that are going to be worthwhile. Got to think about who those people are going to be. Now, Gunther is a testament as to what they say here is Triple H's ability to salvage concepts and titles, making stars like Gunther feel truly important. I mean, they booked him very well in NXT. They booked him quite well. And listen, Gunther, nothing to do with the Imperium. Let me tell you, of the reign that we have right here, I mean, look what Kaiser is out there now as a company. Fine. Like the fact that we don't have Imperium as like a group anymore, as it was with three other people in the realm. Yeah, I think those stars held Gunther back. So Gunther's basically on his own, and he doesn't need anybody else. He doesn't need Ludwig Kaiser, but he's been not so much of an issue anymore. So what has Triple H done so far? You know, being in the creative and being in front and center of what's going on right now. Again, besides the bloodline, he has stars right now he can work off of. Rhea Ripley, Jey Uso, Cody Rhodes, and Gunther are some of the names that are being brought up over here. Sportster says that, you know, Gunther's the best thing that comes from Triple H's booking. And they write here that the bloodline, Cody Rhodes, Sami Zayn have more than thrived from Triple H's booking. Well, Sami Zayn benefited from the bloodline. Make no mistake. Cody Rhodes was going to do fine. I think, you know, whatever he decided to go and do with him anyway, the comeuppance to pick him at superstar level, like the main star to go and carry the company, was beating Roman Reigns and that long title reign. That was very important for him. And then his feud with Seth Rollins was actually quite important as well. So they say that wrestlers are now predicted and treated like stars in WWE, right? So they're saying here that since Vince left creative, the company's seen an upward shift in quality and in business. Championships have prestige, and both weekly shows and pay-per-views are worth tuning in for. You know, that's stretching a little bit. I'm not seeing everything on Raw and SmackDown that makes me feel like I got to watch every second of every minute. And that's not going to happen anymore. Let's make that clear as well. We're not going to get the Raw and SmackDowns of, you know, the Monday Night Wars. That's not going to happen. But I mean, I'll catch myself if I need to go and catch the clips of whatever happens on the show. There's enough clip-worthy material on there, but you know. So among the two brands, season to point out a sea of stars who are over with fans such as LA Knight, Cody Rhodes, Rhea Ripley, Sami Zayn, Bayley, Jey Uso, and countless others. So now, Bayley removing herself from Damage Control, yeah, somewhat that has helped her out in the WrestleMania run, beating Io Sky. I get that. LA Knight, he's an anomaly. This is a gimmick that gets over. But they're not doing him any favors when it comes to wins and losses. Now they're going to set up LA Knight and Carmelo Hayes. So LA Knight will just basically what? He's going to drop to Carmelo Hayes once they have their feud? That's what I think it'll be. Because it doesn't matter. LA Knight will be over no matter what. So now WrestleVotes via Give Me Sport had reported that Vince McMahon, before he was ousted, he was intent on burying Gunther for one reason or another. Meaning that if things had gone differently, he might not be with the company today. But Triple H just came in time, and he's been the strongest booked star in the whole company. And when they go along to say as well, they say that Gunther's lost one single match since his main roster call-up. And yeah, he's won pretty consistently where he's been at. He's been booked thoroughly and strongly. And Gunther's won his matches clean. Only when he's desperate or cocky does someone interfere on his behalf, which only adds layers to his character and works well to make his opponent seem stronger when he does feel the need to resort to underhanded tactics. But really, we don't see that much of that. And I feel like Gunther's getting more booked as a face anyway than a heel. More people feel like that with him anyway. But that's not everything. I mean, there's a thing where we still need opponents for these stars. And I just think that when we see some of the stars they have that they're trying to use for whatever, the titles, we're hearing about those names. Like, think about this again. Of the names they mentioned over here, these are all title holders except for Jey Uso, right? LA Knight and Jey Uso are the two names they bring in here of stars that have been booked solid, right? But Cody Rhodes is a champion. Rhea Ripley was a champion before she dropped out. Sami Zayn's a champion. Bayley's a champion. Remember, titles. Book me some stars without belts. Okay? We don't see that well. And that's the part I'm kind of like really concerned about. I'll tell you this too. When I think about this TNA relationship, we talked about that I did a Supporters Club episode on TNA and the new collaboration that's coming up right now. And, now we have Jordynne Grace that's going to face Roxanne Perez for the NXT Women's Championship at NXT Battleground. Now, if everything serves me correctly, am I right? It's only going to be Jordynne Grace that's going to be able to go after Roxanne Perez's title. Like, we're not going to see title versus title, right? NXT Women's title, and Jordynne Grace is going to take on Roxanne Perez. That's it. So I want to figure that out. I don't know. But what it comes down to it is this. So for Jordynne Grace, this opportunity for her to be here now at this point, we know that TNA is having their own issues. Okay? After Scott D'Amore got fired, now we're hearing a number of officials, a number of, former wrestlers that were part of creative or marketing, from Sign Guy Dudley to R.D. Evans and others, a couple of distinctive people that have left the company. And as far as booking for, the company, I remember they had a thing about what they're going to, they haven't really set up, I think, officially where Battle for Glory is going to be yet, but they have set up, they have for August, first anniversary, right? And then they have, or July, and then anniversary, and then a taping in Tampa in August for an event, and that's where they're at so far. But there's nothing being booked after that. Like, the next 3 months are booked, but that's all they have right now so far. So for Jordynne Grace, this relationship might work well because I can see where WWE was looking to go ahead and pick off some people on the TNA roster. Okay. I mean, I get it. I get why they would do that. And obviously they have some friends over there. Tommy Dreamer, Eric Young, among others that are going to be able to and be receptive because for the sake of TNA, we're getting some stars that might go ahead and cross over here. We don't know who they're going to be yet. Nobody's come over to TNA yet, but Jordynne Grace gets a 5-minute match on NXT tonight, or the other night, and now she's getting the match with Roxanne Perez. That will be good. It'll be very good. How are they going to book that? So right now, Jordynne Grace recently talked about the current state of TNA right now, and the fact that Tommy Dreamer right now is leading the charge right now for creative. And Jordynne Grace has said now, quote, honestly, it's pretty much the same. It's going awesome, I guess. Obviously, we have this kind of almost full-blown partnership now with WWE, and hopefully it continues on. There's honestly not much of a change. Instead of asking Scott about something, I just asked Tommy. Now, Jordynne Grace talked with Fightful.com, said about how there have been some additional backstage shakeups taking place. So there's David Shahadi, R.D. Evans, Lou D'Angeli, and others that are being let go or resigned in the recent weeks. Now, Jordynne Grace is already making an appearance at Royal Rumble, and then the appearance on NXT right now. Grace is the only TNA star who's crossed over. There are plenty of other teases of other TNA stars who are appearing within WWE soon, and vice versa. We don't know anything about that yet. So there's thoughts about who would be able to be available in the crossover for both, and what would benefit. So one of the stars that got in here as well is Mustafa Ali, who's current X Division champion. And Cedric Alexander started joking about Grace's NXT appearance. Would that mean he could challenge for the TNA X Division title? And then Ali responded to Alexander, reminding them that Alexander had given Ali a shot at the WWE Cruiserweight Championship many years ago, teasing he may return the favor. Cedric Alexander going over there. Well, that's good for him. He's not doing anything else right now on the main roster. He's so low on the totem pole. He's like been buried in main event for a long time. So that won't be a bad thing. But nothing else has been said so far about who else can be brought in and who might go ahead and cross over. So Jordynne Grace getting this one spot here. Does it benefit her? The only thing I would think it would be a benefit for Jordynne Grace is that if she's going to get a job in WWE, but like, you know, can they book Jordynne Grace correctly? I'm going to say it like this. Listen, Jordynne Grace is a different type of athlete, but like I could see some fans that if they don't know who Jordynne Grace is, they only know her because she was in Royal Rumble and NXT this other night. They might think, wasn't that Zoe Stark? Same kind of build. They could think that. I would feel worried to see Jordynne Grace be anywhere but TNA. I mean, she's made her career there, and it would be nice to go and see her there anyway. But I don't think you're going to see anything much else out of this. And for Mustafa Ali, listen, you know, he doesn't need to prove himself. He's got X Division title right now. He's doing the gimmick right now as the politician. It's working for him. He's doing just fine. And of course, there's the option. Oh, well, what about Joe Henry making his way over? Whatever. But it's one of those things where, like, you know, the other smaller promotions, they can keep doing what they're doing right now. Like, well, listen, even with all the shakeup right now in TNA, they're on the upswing. They're doing better than they were before. They up the production value. The ratings have been okay. You know, they're starting to build up from that. They were doing better venues for whatever reason. I don't know what's going to change about this right now, but I guess they're not making as much money as they were before, or at all. So we don't know what the whole story behind that is, but there has been a lot of stuff that's been kept behind the scenes and very kept quiet. So we don't know. But Jordynne Grace here, it's like an epitome of like, okay, well, this collaboration, are there a couple of stars that WWE might go ahead and try to pick off? Well, they want a Josh Alexander. Well, they want a Moose. I don't know. But I don't know if TNA really benefits from this. Because we're still talking about WWE fans. They're really not much of like whatever. And I don't know. It's just kind of different. But it's not surprising to me because right now they can't do Ring of Honor stars because Tony Khan owns it. And for whatever reason, I guess, you know, WWE doesn't see anything in NWA or MLW for that matter. I mean, to be honest with you, I feel like there's much more upside for like an MLW to work with WWE if they wanted to, but I wouldn't want that either. Two different companies. Like, if TNA wanted to work with anybody, I don't think they necessarily need to work with AEW again, but I would like them to go and work with NWA or MLW, personally. Put some super shows together. Like, I would like that, but they're not. That's whatever reason. That's what their choice is. I can't do anything much about that. A couple of the stories I want to bring up in here. Now, let me just wrap my point about WCW. Okay? So they went through the whole deal with Eric Bischoff and like setting up the company and getting all the way up here from AWA and moving up into what he was able to do. Where I try to think about where Eric Bischoff was saying, I can't compete with WWF. So like, you know, we weren't going to be able to go and do what they're doing. So he had to do something to kind of get eyeballs over to the other product, to their product. So the unpredictability. What I think AEW does right now, personally, I think with some of the gimmicks they have, they're not afraid of being corny or campy. I like that part of AEW. I think that's something that really some people really just get irritated by. It's that carny version of wrestling that we always talk about. Orange Cassidy's character, Tony Storm's character, the way the Elite are kind of reacting right now, Chris Jericho doing the learning tree. Where else could he do that character? Okay? It's that part. MJF with a hot mic. Like, you know, it's a different feel because of who they have out there. And I think those gimmicks work. It's not for everybody. Like, you know, they try to do Danhausen. I don't think it necessarily works for that product in AW, but they tried it anyway. But for me, it's like, you know, they also don't mind going after gimmicks, like, you know, with House of Black. Do they have something to define and distinguish there? And just quirkiness of characters. They don't mind doing that. Meanwhile, I feel like Triple H wants to keep everything very serious and keep everything very, kind of brooding. Like everybody feels like they're kind of brooding. Karrion Kross, Final Testament, that's just a brooding, a brooding faction. And I don't even know why they think that Karrion Kross would try to go and recruit Xavier Woods. I don't even get that part. I just don't get that part. There's a lot of questions to be answered about that. I just don't know. Anyway, about who to kill WCW itself. Let's go bring that up real quick. And some of the fact that now we have this. So the same group that gives the Dark Side of the Ring series are being part of this. And it's been very good so far. Like I did like what they put out so far for this and the setup. And who they brought on as well. There's a lot more to be said. We'll find out what they're going to do. Now, what I didn't know about this as well is that we're going to hear more from other stars that they have that are going to be brought on that we haven't seen yet. In the WWE docuseries, we're going to see more of that. But it's good to go and see this go out over 4 weeks and really get a good full set of the story about what's going on. MJF has spoken recently about his possibility of going to WWE, right? Oh, by the way, Alicia Toot is back in AEW. She was in there for a while. And, for me, it was very interesting to see Alicia Toot come back in after everything was going on because of the fact that, for me, it was, I just remember because she was part with MJF in terms of like, that was who usually was doing all the backstage interviews with him and the Dynasty and the things that set up like that. It always makes me want to think, will Richard Holiday ever make his way into the AEW some way, somehow? Will MJF have the stroke? Because I feel like MJF probably did something to help get Alicia back into the company. So MJF right now, he talks about, with Sports Illustrated, quite a bit of going on right now of his return to AEW Dynamite. So he was asked about if he would consider going to WWE, but he says now, quote, "Of course there was. Am I going to get into the weeds? No. At this point in time, just this move with AEW made the most sense for me. I'm making a ton of fucking money. As far as when the contract ends, that's nobody's business but my own." Now, when people said that he's wearing the denim leather jacket at Double or Nothing, people were trying to go and say that it was a shot at Triple H. Well, he says it was an homage to a special moment for him. He says a jean jacket was over what I feel was my leather jacket. But that jean jacket is certainly an homage to a return that meant something to me when I was a kid in Madison Square Garden. I'm sure people can connect the dots. He also talked about his belief that he's the biggest star in wrestling and did a lot more as well. Now, in the story that he brings up, he says he's back and here to save the day. Daddy's going to make a change, and Daddy's going to help the health of the company. Because you can tell that there's been a lot of things that happened since World's End late last year that without MJF, it was quite a bit of things going on to try to get things back the way it should be. He talked about now that I created in a very short period of time the dog collar match, epic promos with CM Punk, the Iron Man match with Bryan Danielson, the promo with William Regal, the Dynamite ring, and all the wins that came with that. Dinner Debonair, my pipe bomb in LA, lashing and whipping Cody, kicking Cody in the dick after I threw in the towel after ruining an opportunity for him to become world champion of my promotion, me putting Wardlow through the paces, right? This is just a fact. I've created some of the greatest moments in the history of the business, and I've only been on national television for an extraordinarily short period of time. I've said it before, I'll say it again, because it's true. I'm 28 years old, and I've already had a Hall of Fame career. There's nobody you can compare or contrast me to. There's never been anyone like me before. The confidence is amazing. But he's right. He says in 2019 that I can safely say Adam Cole is one of the best of the best. Point blank, he was the guy, numero uno with any and all promotions. I can also say at the end of 2023, he was part of the top quarter hour of every weekly television until he broke his ankle in 2 places. That's it. You got to give him his due. I refuse to say give the devil his due. I'm the devil. He's a cheap knockoff carbon copy, and he's also a pussy. Please put that in writing. He also says that I sat in my interview when I grabbed the stick. It's not my fault. Everybody in comparison sucks a big old bag of donkey dicks. No one is on my level. No one has ever been on my level. Sometimes I feel like I'm jaywalking because I'm moving so much faster while everybody else adheres to the stop signs and yields. There's no stopping with me. That's why I'm lapping everyone else in the professional wrestling landscape. You know, it's really nice that he did give 6 months off. I think it was very important. So MJF has signed a lucrative long-term extension with AEW, and he says his popularity is sort of the point. Well, it's been sort of the point where his name is even chanted at WWE shows, and those chants were especially notable when Triple H was on the Pat McAfee show during the ascent of Cody Rhodes at the main event at WrestleMania 40. A point of emphasis during the return promo at Double or Nothing was highlighting he is not a New Japan or a Vince McMahon creation. That leaves him in a very rare space of professional wrestling. Quote, the reason the promo resonated with people is because everything that came out of my mouth was fact. It wasn't feelings, it was facts. Can you remember the last time someone became a household name in arenas in WWE were chanting their name when they had zero exposure elsewhere? We're talking the Crockett era, aren't we? I take pride in that. AEW is my territory, but I'm a name in every territory because I made professional wrestling my bitch. MJF made MJF. And you know what's crazy? I'm still evolving. No one really knows me 100% ever, and nobody ever will. To coin a line from one of the greats, if there's one thing for sure about MJF, nothing's for sure. That's an Arn Anderson line. I almost look at my wrestling matches as a discography of sorts. Somebody might say to you that the match between me and Jungle Boy at Double or Nothing 2020 is one of the greatest matches they've ever seen. They might say the greatest match they ever saw was MJF versus Darby Allin at Full Gear. Or that MJF versus Adam Cole at Wembley Stadium was the greatest spectacle they ever seen. Or MJF in the Iron Man match against Bryan Danielson, or the Four Pillars match, or CM Punk in the Dog Collar match, or MJF versus Cody Rhodes. What's so interesting about me to toot my own horn, toot, is because I'm so good at talking, but people generally forget how great I am in the ring. Now, he talks about that for fans, his matches should now reach a new standard. Nearing the end of his title run, he was compromised in an injury, but refused to miss any obligations. Quote, as far as that Samoa Joe match goes, full transparency, my shoulder was so messed up, I couldn't even do cardio. When I ran, my arms would swing slightly, and the pain that would cause was unbearable. But I got in the ring that night to do my job. Frankly, I find that interesting. A lot of people in my generation are pussies. Please print that. They're too afraid to get in there when they have a boo-boo. That's not how I operate. I take my job very seriously. If you put up MJF on the top of the building, I'm showing up. And one more thing about that match. Joe's a tubby little bitch, and if we ever wrestle again, I'm going to bite his face off. I will give him credit. That night, he was the better man. He outsmarted me. He didn't out-wrestle me. He outsmarted me. And that's never happened in the history of my career, so kudos to him that he earned that world title. And then the debate about if MJF's return at Double or Nothing was the right time, or could have been more of a surprise moment on Dynamite. But Tony Khan, in this story, they make the point that, unlike WCW, Eric Bischoff didn't make the pay-per-views important. It was a TV show that was more important. What was on for free? The fact that he gave away Goldberg and Hogan, a bona fide Starrcade match, on Nitro, July 4th weekend, and promoted it 3 nights before, with Thunder and James David Dillon coming out to announce the match. That's all we had as a heads up. If more time, but the venue was great, Georgia Dome. They got 40,000 in there. They probably could have sold the whole damn place out with more time. He goes on to say, Jacob Freeman, based on the last minute pay-per-view buys, when people heard MJF's coming back, that gave people no choice but to buy the pay-per-view. So it was the right choice. And if you really want to see me on Dynamite, the good news is I'm going to talk tonight and I'm going to get a lot off my chest. There's a lot of shit I watched on my TV that was out for all those months, and it really pissed me off. And I'll be talking about it on Dynamite. I didn't even scratch the surface of that pay-per-view. AEW is far more complete with MJF. An original since the beginning of the company, he adds an entirely different dynamic to professional wrestling. To paraphrase Voltaire in this story, they say, if Phil Jackson didn't exist, it wouldn't be necessary to invent him. Quote, frankly, everybody should be getting in line to kiss my ass. I'm back, so people have a reason to tune in. They've done a hell of a job carrying the load while I was gone, but everything's going to be fine now, and I'm back, and I'm here to save the day. End quote. MJF's going to be a needle mover for the company. Okay? Just like Cody Rhodes is more like a needle mover right now in WWE, right? Pretty much. For me, it's about both companies are still making those kind of mistakes that they are. But, you know, the one thing that hasn't changed in the WCW days is the vitriol, the tribalism. It's been brought back. How it ever started is because WWE fans are going to do what they're going to do. They're going to be upset. They're going to piss and moan. And They don't want to see anybody else but their company succeed, at the detriment of every other promotion out there. Which I don't understand why you care about the free agents coming into your company. As long as they're in WWE, right? Which I can't stand that thought process, that line of thinking. It bothers me immensely. I just don't like it. I hate it a lot. Really, I do. So let's just get off of that, huh? And I hope some of you will go ahead and catch the WCW documentary and get more out of it, because there is a lot more to be said in terms of what other things that WWE and AEW need to learn, that they need to stop doing, that were the detriment. Listen, AEW and WWE are not going away anywhere, but they could do better than WCW is doing. They could do some better things. Come back for another Wrestling Consumer podcast, because wrestling needs us.